Yuna stood alone on the observation deck and looked out at the endless darkness of space. The stars were beautiful. They always were. But she was not here to enjoy the view. She was here because the Galactic Union did not trust humans with anything important. The warship Eternal Dawn was one of the finest vessels in the Union fleet. It had powerful weapons, advanced shields, and a crew of over 2,000 soldiers from a dozen different species. Yuna was the only human aboard. She'd been given a small room with a viewport and a datapad. Her official title was Cultural Liaison. Her real job was to sit quietly and stay out of the way. She did not mind. She had learned patience a long time ago, before Earth made contact with alien life. Yuna had served in the military for 12 years. She had been a soldier, then a special forces operator, then an instructor. She had fought in jungles and deserts and frozen mountains. She had seen friends die. She had killed enemies with her bare hands. War was not new to her, but the aliens did not know this. To them, humans were a young species, primitive, weak. Their bodies were soft. Their lives were short. They'd only discovered space travel 50 years ago. What could they possibly know about real war? Admiral Taiho was the commander of the Eternal Dawn. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Valorians, had been fighting wars in space for over 10,000 years. When Yuna first came aboard, he had greeted her politely. "Welcome, human," he had said. "You may observe our operations. Perhaps your species will learn something useful." Yuna had smiled and thanked him. She did not argue. She did not explain her background. There was no point. They would not believe her anyway. Now, 3 weeks later, the ship was heading into danger. The Vela sector had been claimed by the Keth Dominion, a powerful empire that conquered worlds and enslaved populations. The Union had sent the Eternal Dawn and 41 other warships to push them back. It was supposed to be a simple mission. Intelligence reports said the Keith had only 50 ships in the sector. The Union fleet outnumbered them. Victory seemed certain, but intelligence reports were wrong. Yuna was watching through her viewport when the Keth fleet arrived. She counted the ships as they dropped out of hyperspace. 50, then 100, then 200. They kept coming. By the time the last ship appeared, there were 300 enemy vessels surrounding the Union fleet. The Eternal Dawn shook as alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Yuna heard crew members running past her door, shouting orders in languages she did not understand. She stayed where she was. Running would not help. On the bridge, Admiral Taiho stared at the tactical display with 4 wide eyes. His officers looked at him, waiting for orders. But what orders could he give? They were outnumbered 7-1. Their weapons could not penetrate the combined shields of so many enemy ships. Their engines could not escape the blockade. They were going to die. Admiral, one of his officers, said quietly, "The Kith are hailing us." Taiho closed his eyes for a moment. Then he straightened his back and lifted his chin. "Put them through." The main screen flickered, and a Keth commander appeared. The Keth were insect-like creatures with black exoskeletons and multiple red eyes. Their voices sounded like metal scraping against stone. "Union vessel," the Keth commander said. "You are surrounded. Your fleet is outnumbered. You have 2 choices. Surrender unconditionally, or be destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide." Screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Some officers began to pray quietly. Others simply stared at nothing, accepting their fate. Taiho gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that his gray skin turned white. A young officer named Minho walked away from his station. He was a Valorian like the Admiral, but much younger. His hands were shaking. He wandered through the corridors of the ship without knowing where he was going. Eventually, he found himself outside the observation deck, through the small window in the door. He saw the human woman standing at her viewport. She was not running. She was not crying. She was not even sitting down. She simply stood there, arms crossed, watching the enemy fleet as if it were a mild curiosity. Minho opened the door and stepped inside. "Human," he said. "Are you not afraid?" Yuna turned her head slightly to look at him. Her face was calm. Her eyes were steady. "Fear does not help," she said. "It only makes you slow." Minho did not understand. "We are going to die. 300 ships against 42. There is no hope." Yuna turned back to the viewport. "There is always hope," she said quietly. "You just have to know where to look." "Where?" Minho asked desperately. "Where's the hope in this?" Yuna did not answer immediately. She watched the Keth ships floating in formation, their weapons powered and ready. They were confident. They were certain of victory. They had every reason to be. But Yuna had seen confident enemies before. She had seen armies that thought they could not lose. She had watched them break when they realized they were wrong. Hope, she finally said, is in the things your enemy does not expect. It is in the strength they cannot measure. It is in the will they cannot understand. Minho shook his head. "Pretty words. But words cannot stop weapons." Yuna smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible. "No," she agreed. "But sometimes, the right words can stop the people who control those weapons." Minho stared at her. There was something in her voice that he could not identify. Something that made him feel strange. It was not comfort. It was not reassurance. It was the feeling of standing. Next to something dangerous, he left the observation deck without another word. Behind him, Yuna continued to watch the stars. The countdown had begun. 40 minutes had passed since the Keth ultimatum. The crew of the Eternal Dawn moved through the ship like ghosts. Some prepared for battle. Others wrote final messages to their families. A few simply sat in silence, waiting for the end. Admiral Taiho remained on the bridge. He had considered every option. Fighting was suicide. Running was impossible. Surrender meant slavery for his crew and disgrace for his name. There were no good choices left. "Admiral," his communications officer said suddenly, "the Keth fleet is initiating standard pre-battle scans." Taiho nodded slowly. This was normal. Before any attack, the Keth would scan enemy vessels to identify crew species, count weapons, and locate command centers. It was efficient. It was methodical. It was how they fought. "Let them scan," Taiho said tiredly. "It changes nothing." The scanning beams swept across the Union fleet. Ship by ship, deck by deck, room by room. The Keth computers cataloged everything. Weapons systems, engine capabilities, crew locations, species identification. On the observation deck, Yuna felt a faint tingling sensation as the scan passed over her. She did not move. She kept her eyes on the enemy fleet and waited. The scan finished. Several seconds passed in silence. Then something strange happened. The Keth flagship sent a second scan. This time it was focused on a single location, the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn. The beam swept over Yuna 3 times, as if the Keth could not believe what they were seeing. On the bridge, the communications officer looked confused. "Admiral, the Keth are requesting a direct visual feed." Taiho frowned. "Of what?" "The observation deck, sir. They want to see the human." The bridge went quiet. Every officer turned to look at the Admiral. This was not normal. The Keth never made such requests. They scanned, they demanded surrender, and they attacked. They did not ask to see individual crew members. "Why?" Taiho asked. "They did not say, sir." Taiho thought for a moment. The request was unusual, but it was also harmless. Perhaps the Keth were curious about humans. Perhaps they wanted to study a new species before destroying the ship. Whatever the reason, there was no benefit in refusing. "Grant the request," Taiho ordered. A camera activated on the observation deck. The feed was sent to the Keth flagship. Across the void of space, 300 warships received the image of a single, human woman standing alone at a viewport. Yuna noticed the small red light of the camera. She understood what was happening. The enemy wanted to look at her. She did not know why, but she was not going to hide. She turned slightly so the camera could see her face clearly. Then she waited on the Keth flagship. Supreme Commander Voroth watched the feed with growing unease. The human was small. Her body was soft and fragile. She had no natural weapons, no armor, no claws or fangs. By every measure, she should have been the least threatening creature on that ship. But she was not afraid. Voreth had conquered hundreds of worlds. He had faced warriors from every corner of the galaxy. He knew what fear looked like. He knew the trembling hands, the rapid breathing, the desperate eyes of creatures facing death. This human showed none of those signs. She stood perfectly still. Her breathing was slow and steady. Her heart rate, according to medical scanners, was completely normal. She looked at the camera as if she were looking directly at Voreth himself, and then she smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a desperate attempt to appear brave. It was the smile of someone who knew something that others did not. It was the smile of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Voreth felt something he had not felt in decades. A cold sensation in his chest. A tightness in his throat. It took him several seconds to recognize the feeling. Fear. Check the species database, he ordered his officers. Find everything we have on humans. The officers worked quickly. They accessed ancient files that had not been opened in thousands of years. Most species in the galaxy had extensive records. Humans had almost nothing. Just a single file, marked with the highest security clearance. "Sir," one officer said nervously, "the file is sealed. It requires your personal authorization to open." "Open it," Voreth commanded. The file appeared on his screen. It was old, very old. The date stamp showed it was created over 12,000 cycles ago. During the early expansion of the Keth Dominion, Voreth began to read. As he read, his multiple red eyes grew wider. His claws dug into the arms of his chair. His breathing became fast and shallow. "Impossible," he whispered. Back on the Eternal Dawn, the crew noticed that something had changed. The Keth fleet was no longer preparing to attack. The ships were holding position, but their weapons were not charging. Their engines were not moving. They were waiting. "What is happening?" Minho asked, staring at his tactical display. "Why are they not attacking?" Admiral Taiho had no answer. He looked at the visual feed of the observation deck. The human woman was still standing there, still watching, still smiling, that strange smile. "What did you do?" He murmured to himself. Yuna could not hear him. But if she could, she would have answered honestly. She had done nothing. She had simply let them look at her. She had let them see what she was. And apparently, that was enough. The minutes ticked by. The deadline came and went. The Keth did not attack. Something was very wrong. Or perhaps something was very right. Yuna kept watching the stars. She was patient. She had always been patient. Whatever was happening on the enemy flagship, she would find out soon enough. For now, she was content to wait and smile. The ancient file glowed on Voreth's screen. The words were written in an old form of the Keth language, but he could still understand them. Each sentence made his blood run colder. 12,000 cycles ago, the Keth Dominion was young and hungry. They had conquered dozens of star systems. Their armies were unstoppable. Their confidence was absolute. When scouts discovered a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, they saw only another easy victory. The planet was called Earth by its native inhabitants. The Keth called it Target 749. The native species were primitive. They had no space travel. They had no energy weapons. They fought each other with sharpened metal and wooden sticks. They should have been simple to conquer. The Keth sent 3 ships to harvest the planet. Standard procedure: land, eliminate resistance, collect resources, leave. The mission was expected to take 2 days. The ships never returned. After 1 month, the Dominion sent a larger force. 10 warships with full combat crews. They landed on different continents to investigate what had happened to the first expedition. Only 1 ship escaped. It carried 17 survivors out of a crew of 3,000. The survivors were broken. They refused to speak for days. When they finally told their story, the military commanders thought they were lying. The tale was too impossible. Too terrifying. The humans had not surrendered. That was expected from primitive species who did not understand the power they faced. What was not expected was what came next. The humans did not just fight. They studied. They watched the Keth movements and learned their patterns. They set traps. They attacked at night when Keth vision was weakest. They used fire, poison, to terrain that the invaders did not understand, and they did not stop. When Keth soldiers killed human warriors, more humans came. When they burned human villages, the survivors rebuilt and kept fighting. When they captured human leaders, others took their place immediately. One survivor described finding a human soldier who had lost both legs to a plasma blast. The human was crawling toward a Keth position, a blade in each hand, still trying to attack. When they finally killed him, he was smiling. The final transmission from the doomed fleet was recorded and stored in this file. Vorath played it. The voice was distorted by age, but the terror was clear. They do not stop. They do not flee. They do not surrender. Cut them down and they keep crawling. Burn them and they keep fighting. Kill their leaders and new ones appear. We have faced warriors across the galaxy. We have never faced anything like this. These creatures are not soldiers. They are something else. Something wrong. Do not return to this world. Do not wake them. Let them sleep in their corner of the galaxy. Pray they never learn to reach the stars. The transmission ended. Vorath sat in silence. For 12,000 cycles, the Keith had obeyed that warning. Earth was classified as a forbidden zone. No ships were allowed within 10 light years. Over time, the warning became legend, then myth, then forgotten entirely. The younger generations knew nothing about the blue planet. They thought humans were a new species, primitive, harmless, just another race that had recently stumbled into space. They were wrong. Vorath looked back at the visual feed. The human woman was still standing there, still watching, still waiting with that patient smile. Now he understood that smile. It was the smile of a species that had been sleeping. A species that the galaxy had foolishly forgotten. A species that was now awake and watching to see what would happen next. His officers were staring at him, waiting for orders. They did not know what he had read. They did not understand why their supreme commander was sitting frozen in his chair. "Sir," one of them asked carefully, "the deadline has passed. Should we begin the attack?" Vorath did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the report. He was thinking about those 3 ships that never returned. He was thinking about the crawling soldier with the 2 blades. Humans lived short lives, 80 or 90 cycles at most, but they remembered things. They passed stories down through generations. They held grudges for centuries. The report had mentioned this specifically. Humans never forgot an enemy, never. If the Keth attacked this ship and killed this human, word would reach Earth. The humans would learn that the Keth still existed. They would remember what happened 12,000 cycles ago, and they would come. Not immediately. Humans were patient. They would study. They would prepare. They would build ships and weapons and armies, and when they were ready, they would hunt the Keth across the galaxy. There would be no negotiation. No surrender accepted. Humans did not conquer. They did not enslave. When they truly hated an enemy, they did something worse. They erased them. Vorath made his decision. "Hold fire," he ordered. "All ships, stand down." His officers looked at him in shock. "Sir, we outnumber them 7-1. Victory is certain," Vorath said quietly. "It is not. Send a message to the Union fleet. Tell them we wish to negotiate." "Negotiate? Sir, this is madness. We have never retreated from battle." Vorath turned to face his officer. For the first time in his long career, his voice trembled. "We retreated once," he said. 12,000 cycles ago. We were wise then. We must be wise now." He looked back at the screen. The human had noticed the weapons powering down. Her smile had not changed. She knew. Somehow she knew everything, and she was still just watching. On the bridge of the eternal dawn, confusion had turned to chaos. The tactical display showed something impossible. The Keth fleet was powering down their weapons. 300 warships, the largest force the Dominion had ever assembled, were standing down without firing a single shot. Admiral Taiho stared at the screen with all four eyes. His officers were talking over each other, trying to understand what was happening. Theories flew back and forth. Perhaps it was a trap. Perhaps the Keth weapons had malfunctioned. Perhaps reinforcements were coming. None of them looked at the real answer. None of them looked at the observation deck. Minich was the first to make the connection. He pulled up the visual feed of the human woman and watched her carefully. She had not moved. She had not done anything visible. But somehow, impossibly, the battle had stopped the moment the Keth saw her. Admiral Minho said slowly, "I think the human did something." Aho turned to look at him. What could she possibly do? She has no weapons, no authority. She is just an observer. I know, sir, but look at the timing. They scanned her. They asked to see her, and then they stopped attacking. The bridge went quiet. Everyone turned to look at the feed. The human woman stood at her viewport, arms crossed, watching the enemy fleet with calm eyes. "That is ridiculous," Taiho said. "Humans are one of the weakest species in the galaxy. They cannot even lift twice their own weight. Their bones break easily. They die from exposure to temperatures that other species find comfortable. Why would the Keth fear them?" Nobody had an answer. On the observation deck, Yuna had been thinking. She understood now why the Keth had stopped. She had read the classified files when she joined the Union Diplomatic Corps. Earth's government had discovered those files shortly after first contact and kept them secret from the public. Humanity was not unknown to the galaxy. They had been visited before, and the visitors had not enjoyed the experience. Yuna did not feel pride about this. She did not feel shame either. It was simply history. Her ancestors had done what they needed to survive. They had fought an enemy with superior technology and won through pure determination. That was the human way. But now she had a choice to make. The Keth were afraid. They were waiting to see what she would do. She could let the situation remain uncertain. Or she could send a message. She decided to send a message. Yuna walked to the small computer terminal on her deck. She was not supposed to have communication access. But she had convinced a young engineer to give her basic privileges during the first week of the voyage, just in case. She searched the ship's cultural database for the Keith language. Then she searched deeper into the historical archives until she found what she was looking for. A phrase from the ancient warning, the last words transmitted by the doomed expedition 12,000 cycles ago. She typed the phrase carefully, making sure every symbol was correct. Then she transmitted it on an open channel to the entire Keth fleet. The message was simple. 5 words in the old Keth tongue. "We remember you too." Across the void, 300 warships received the transmission simultaneously. Officers stared at their screens in disbelief. This was not possible. Humans had only discovered space travel 50 years ago. They should not know this language. They should not know this phrase, but they did. On the flagship, Vorath read the message and felt his heart stop. The human knew about the ancient encounter. The human remembered what her ancestors had done, and she was telling him clearly and simply that humanity had not forgotten. The medical scanners on his ship were still monitoring the human's vital signs. Her heart rate had not changed. Her breathing was steady. She had sent a message that terrified an entire fleet. Her body showed no signs of stress or excitement. She was not bluffing. She was not desperate. She was completely serious. "What do we do, Commander?" one of his officers asked. The fear in his voice was obvious. Vorath thought carefully. The human had given him a message, but she had also given him a choice. She had not threatened immediate violence. She had not demanded anything. She had simply reminded him that humans remembered the past. This was his chance to end things peacefully. If he withdrew now, the humans might let his fleet go. If he attacked, he might win this battle. But he would lose the war that followed. "Open a channel to the Union flagship," Vorath ordered. "I will speak with their commander directly." The channel opened. Admiral Taiho appeared on screen, looking confused and suspicious. Keth Commander Taiho said formally, "You requested negotiation? We are listening." Vorath chose his words carefully. We are prepared to withdraw from the Vila sector. You may have it. We ask for nothing in return except safe passage. Taiho blinked all four eyes. You are surrendering? Why? Vorath glanced at the feed showing the human woman. She was still watching, still waiting. Some enemies are not worth making, Vorath said quietly. We learned this lesson long ago. We were foolish to forget it. Taiho did not understand. But he was not stupid. He knew when to accept a gift. We accept your withdrawal, he said. You may leave peacefully. Vorath nodded. Then he added one more thing. There is one condition. We must speak with the human directly before we leave. Taiho hesitated. Then he nodded slowly. I will arrange it.
Ow.
The channel closed. Taiho turned to his crew. Bring the human to the bridge. Now, Yuna was already walking toward the door. She had heard the request through the ship's internal systems. It was time to finish this. Yuna walked onto the bridge of the Eternal Dawn. Every officer stopped what they were doing and turned to look at her. She was small compared to the alien crew members around her. Her body was soft and fragile. She carried no weapons. She wore no armor, but something had changed. The crew looked at her differently now. There was curiosity in their eyes, and something else. Something that might have been respect, or fear. Admiral Taiho stepped forward. His forearms hung awkwardly at his sides. He did not know how to address her anymore. Human, he said carefully. The Keth commander wishes to speak with you. Do you accept? Yuna nodded. Yes, Taiho gestured to the communications officer. A moment later, the main screen flickered to life. Supreme Commander Vorath appeared, his red eyes fixed directly on Yuna. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The bridge was completely silent. Everyone was watching. Everyone was waiting. Vorath spoke first. His voice was quiet, tired. You know what we did to your world? Yes, Yuna said simply. You know what your ancestors did to us? Yes. Vorath leaned forward slightly. Then you understand why we stopped. Why we cannot fight you. Yuna tilted her head. I understand why you are afraid. But I do not think you truly understand us yet. Then explain, Vorath said. Help me understand. I have read the ancient records. I have seen what your people did to our soldiers. I know you are dangerous, but I do not know why, Yuna thought for a moment. Then she spoke slowly, choosing her words with care. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest. We do not live the longest. Our bodies are fragile. Our technology is young. By every measure, we should be easy to conquer. She paused. The entire bridge was listening. But we have something that other species do not have. We have patience. We have memory. And we have a fire inside us that does not go out. She took a step closer to the screen. When we face an enemy, we do not just fight. We study. We learn. We wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, we do not stop until the fight is finished. Vorath's claws tightened on his chair. Even when you cannot win? Especially when we cannot win, Yuna said. That is when we are most dangerous. Because we have nothing to lose. And a human with nothing to lose will drag their enemy into the darkness with them. The bridge was deathly quiet. Minho felt a chill run down his spine. Admiral Taiho's four eyes were wide. Vorath was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke again. What do you want from us? Nothing, Yuna said. Leave this sector. Go home. Forget that you saw us here. And if we return? If we attack other Union ships? Yuna smiled. It was the same smile she had shown before, calm, patient, knowing. Then you will see us again. And next time, we will not be spectators.
Ow.
Vorath stared at her. He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her that the Keth Dominion was powerful enough to crush humanity. But he remembered the ancient records. He remembered the crawling soldier with the two blades. He remembered the ships that never came home. We will leave, he said finally, and we will not return. Yuna nodded. That is wise. The screen went dark. A moment later, the tactical display showed the Keth fleet moving. One by one, the massive warships turned away and engaged their hyperspace drives. Within 30 minutes, all 300 ships had vanished. The Vela sector was empty. Admiral Taiho stood in the center of his bridge, trying to process what had just happened. His fleet had been outnumbered 7-1. They had been moments away from destruction. And then a single human woman had made 300 warships retreat without firing a single shot. He turned to Yuna. How did you do that? Yuna shrugged slightly. I did not do anything. I just reminded them of something they had forgotten. What? What did they forget? Yuna looked at him with calm eyes. They forgot that humans do not start wars. We finish them. They forgot that we hold grudges across generations. They forgot that we do not know how to surrender. She turned and began walking back toward the observation deck. Then she stopped and looked over her shoulder. Your species has been fighting wars for 10,000 years, she said. Ours has been fighting for 200,000. War is in our blood. It is in our bones. We do not enjoy it. We do not seek it. But when it comes, we become something different. Taiho swallowed hard. Something different. Yuna smiled one last time. Something that even we do not fully understand. Something that the Keth learned about 12,000 years ago. Something that the galaxy should hope it never sees again. She walked away. The bridge crew watched her go in silence. Minho was the first to speak. Admiral, he said quietly. What do we tell Command? How do we explain this? Taiho thought for a long moment. Then he sat down in his chair and let out a long breath. We tell them the truth, he said. We tell them that the human was only a spectator, and somehow that was enough. On the observation deck, Yuna returned to her viewport. The stars were beautiful again. The danger had passed. The enemy was gone. She picked up her datapad and began writing her report. It would be classified, of course. Humanity's true nature was still a secret that Earth wanted to keep, but Yuna knew the secret would not stay hidden forever. Sooner or later, the galaxy would learn what humans really were, and on that day, the universe would have to make a choice. Friend or enemy? Yuna hoped they would choose wisely. She looked out at the endless darkness of space and smiled. Just a spectator. For now.